away. In 1964, we had the end of the colonial state and the detachment from the United Kingdom. And Malta has a parliament with 75 members, and they have a two-party system with all the advantages and disadvantages this brings. And one of the topics is we have a high participation of over 90% in the last elections, and this time they are speaking about a low election, but 85.5%. Well, some of the European countries here would like be green but of envy, and this is also a proof that people are really connected with their parties. And it's very difficult to gain a seat in the parliament. And this election is one of the most difficult moments. We had the pandemic with very strict measures, with high vaccine participation, and we had the corona crisis management, but also positive numbers and a low part of people that are not unemployed. And Malta is obviously very important, is seen also critical. We are talking about corruption and like an oasis for people who want to hide away money, and very important also the bomb attack on Mrs. Caruana. And up to today, we do not know what happened. We, after that, had a very important crisis of Mr. Muscat in January 2020, and then Vella became prime minister, and with the and then he was in charge, and we had obviously also the Conservative with the National Party, and this we didn't manage to change anything. They didn't manage to change anything, and we will see what was important, the national or political topics, or are there also other topics like Russia, migration policy, other European questions were very important, and how will all this continue and go ahead? We will talk about the elections, and you already gave us the numbers in 2017, and we are very happy that you are here once again. And afterwards with Mrs. Engel from the WDR, we will talk about what will or might be happening in the European context. Thank you very much for being with us, Mrs. Engel, and I'm looking forward to your explications during this meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Becker, and yes, you probably have seen it. I made Malta bigger than what it is. It's 520,000 inhabitants and 350,000 people able to participate in voting. But if you want to participate in our exchange, you can send an email. Now, the email is streamline@lv-brüssel.ui.hessen.de. streamline@lv-brüssel.hessen.de, or you can obviously call us. It's 0032 472 030181. 0032 472 030181. Now, if you have questions and you can ask our expert, even Brincat. He is just back from Malta, because in Malta you can participate at the elections if you live there for at least 6 months a year. That means that Maltese people that are living elsewhere could not vote, but you can vote already starting from 16 years. Now, we will hear now from him, from our expert, what the election give.
Please change the channel. So, and now, the floor is yours, Ivan.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for the invitation. As you said, I'm back from Malta, from voting, physically there. We'll touch upon that later. The dust, in a way, is still settling on the election result. We have the same government that has been winning the elections since 2013 now. The Prime Minister, Roberta Vella, has been sworn in this morning. This afternoon, he starts on the basis of the party candidates that have been elected, many former ministers from the previous government. He will be forming his cabinet, which will be sworn in tomorrow. So by, let's say, tomorrow evening, we would know the composition of the new government. And then there's a system whereby candidates that have been elected from two respective districts will drop one district, and new members of parliament are elected. And also, on top of that, we will have, after this, for the first time ever, topping up to reach gender quotas. But I think the first point is to look at the results, and then I'll attempt to make a short analysis of how I see these results as they settled in. I think one very, very important factor in this election, which to a certain extent is unprecedented for Malta, is a very low turnout. So we're facing a situation where the Labour Party, which is the party that won the election, has decreased votes from the previous election, despite the fact that it has a larger majority than the previous election. The Nationalist Party has also lost votes from the from the low voter turnout, and actually they've lost more votes than the party in government, which means they've had problems to get people out to vote. Now this, as I'm saying, the turnout in Malta was 85.5%, which by European standards is huge, but by Maltese standards is extremely low. So to get an idea, normally turnouts hover between 90 and 95%, and the last time it's gone down below 90% is 1966, when it was 89.9%. And we're at 85.5% here, with an increase in voters, because for the first time ever, voters above the age of 16 were allowed to vote in this election. In terms of the results, so the party in government, so the Labour Party, got 55% of the vote. The Nationalist Party, so the Conservatives, got 41.7% of the vote, with the smaller parties and independent parties getting, so there it's, I'm seeing 3.1, it's actually slightly adjusted now to 3.2%, which again, by Maltese standards, and I'll get back to that, is also quite significant because we're really speaking about a two-party state, and the votes of the smaller parties plus independent candidate is at 3.2%. So how can we explain this result after the assassination of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia after the last election, a damning public inquiry on the conduct of the Labour government prior and after this brutal assassination of Daphne. Despite concerns on the rule of law, sales of golden passports, alleged corruption by politicians, as well as magisterial inquiries on corruption, which have still not led to arraignments of politicians. Despite all this, this is the largest majority that a Maltese government has ever had, and it's now our job, in a way, as observers, to interpret the result and to see what's happening. It's something which is, to a certain extent, a cause for concern. I'll go through the seats before I'll attempt to shortly give a quick analysis, and then we can discuss later. So in terms of the projection of allocation of seats in Parliament, we're at the Labour Party having 38, the Nationalist Party having 27. This, as I said, will be adjusted. We don't know by how much at this stage because of how the casual elections will work. There is a challenge, and I'll come back to that. So this is the Maltese president, George Vella. The president in Malta has a relatively ceremonial role, but he's sworn in the prime minister this morning, who will swear in the leader of the opposition and then the government. So the prime minister remains Robert Abela, who's been at the helm for 2 years now, and you could say this is his first full mandate because he stepped up and took over after former Prime Minister Joseph Muscat resigned in disgrace. The leader of the opposition has pledged to stay on. He's Bernard Gregg. He's been at the head of the Nationalist Party. So the Nationalist Party in Malta is the Conservative party. He's been at the helm for 1.5 years. He's pledged to stay on despite the worst ever result. For fairness' sake, during the course of this legislature, the Nationalist Party at one point was polling well below 1/3, which risked giving the government a 2/3 majority. So he's managed to, in a way, avoid that. And seeing him grow throughout the campaign, probably I would say he deserves to stay, at least to help regroup the opposition, which is going to be the major challenge for the country. Here, I'm just putting the slide. So this is a coalition of two parties which merged. So you could say this is the Malta's Green Party. They've clinched enough votes to, in inverted commas, deserve a seat in Parliament. But the way the election system works in Malta, you need to get the quota in one district, which of course is impossible for very small parties. And this is something that they have said they will fight in court over the coming weeks and months. And this is uncharted territory for Malta, at least since 1985. Because it could lead to a constitutional crisis, or it could lead to constitutional changes. We still have to wait and see on what basis. So I know time is running out, so I'll quickly run through what I think were the major factors for this result. I'll keep the slide of the result here. I think many times elections are won and lost on the basis of feel-good factor, economy, and there's this saying in English, it's the economy stupid. And if you look at Malta's economy, it's been booming for the past years, despite economic crisis, despite the pandemic, despite tourism at a standstill. So there was clearly this feel-good factor on the ground. During the pandemic, again, to a certain extent, Prime Minister Vella, when he took over, had a baptism of fire. So he had a political crisis linked to the investigation into Daphne Caruana Galizia's assassination, which went up to the highest echelons of government, and on top of that, he had to face the pandemic. And in terms of the way it was managed, despite some hiccups, the Maltese relatively managed to keep the waves relatively low. The country and the population are quite conservative, so unlike maybe in other places where as soon as controls were relaxed, people immediately removed masks. In Malta, still mask wearing, maybe not during the celebrations over the weekend, but other than that, mask wearing still remains highly used throughout. And even to enter Malta, you not only need to be vaccinated, you need to have a booster. And again, this also led to some Maltese not being able to go back to vote in Malta because they were not triple vaccinated. And this applies also to tourists visiting the island. So in terms of trying to keep the pandemic under control, you could say that the performance of the government was good. On top of that, you had the financial injection of the highly controversial passport schemes, which clearly had a major impact on the economy of the country. And the construction boom, which despite, I would say, the devastating impact it is having on the country's landscape, on the country's environment, still is not a major concern, it seems, for the electorate. I would like to highlight that during the election campaign also, there were allegations of corrupt practices just before the election with the government, with the Prime Minister and Finance Minister actually signing checks of tax refunds to the tune of around 70 million, if I'm not mistaken, which again is something received just in the week before the final vote. So this is the first mandate for the Prime Minister. And if the first 2 years were a baptism of fire, now we need to see how he will fare. Will this result finally give him the legitimacy he needs to take tough decisions and decisions that are needed in the country to remove Malta from the grey list, to reestablish rule of law, and to increase faith in the country's institutions, which clearly for neutral observers there is an issue there. I think the proof of the pudding now is going to be in the next few months. I think in the next few months we will actually we will see whether this actual majority will give Roberta Bella the necessary impetus to take the necessary actions and to let institutions really work and have the first arraignments of politicians for corruption in Malta's history. As I said again, the country managed to avert a two-thirds majority, and that would have had a major impact on on democracy in Malta, because two-thirds majority would have given the party in government and the party in parliament the two-thirds majority needed to make changes to the constitution. At the moment, the country is very much a two-party system, and it's always worked on the premise that the two parties work close to each other. But as we see from one election to another, the majority increasing, the risk of moving towards a one-party state is looming on the horizon, and needs to be carefully considered. Unfortunately, the electorate, to a certain extent, did not see the Nationalist Party being a credible alternative government, and you can see that from the results, which are even worse than they were 5 years ago. So, despite all that has happened over the past 5 years, still the main party in opposition has not been able to make inroads, and this again is something that needs to be factored in, and probably unless things change, the opposition, and here I would include also the smaller parties, need to somehow start to think and start to come together on how to be a credible opposition to government, because in a democracy you need both the government and you need the opposition, and you need the fourth estate, which is the media, which is also relatively weak in the country. So I think my last point is on the voter turnout. As I said, voter turnout was at an all-time low at 85.5%, at least since independence. Here again, I think we still need to analyze what has really happened. Is it voters who live abroad who could not go to vote in Malta for a number of reasons? I think, at least I haven't seen demographics of how many Maltese have actually migrated from Malta over the past years. How many of these are voters that have bought a passport or that have acquired citizenship, or who live in Malta but are not maybe yet fully integrated into the social life, or who don't necessarily feel the need to vote? Or is it, as many think, a huge protest vote? And here we're speaking of a very large silent opposition. We're speaking of nearly 50,000 voters, which is larger than the gap between the two parties. And if that's the case, then the electorate has really spoken. And my question is, who is going to listen? Thanks.
We are going definitely to listen to you now. So we'll start our conversation on this and deepen that. And also, please, for you, still the information, you can participate in that conversation by sending your questions either online or giving us a call. There should be the information. You can see that there on the screen. There you can send all your questions. So, Ivan, you were just wondering the low turnout. I mean, all other European countries really would be delighted by a turnout for 85.5%. So for Malta, you said it's a slap in the face. You were there, you took your chance to vote. Can you please tell us about the atmosphere? So what type of people did you meet? Were there long queues? How was the atmosphere at the moment?
As I said, so it's impossible for a Maltese person living abroad to vote either in an embassy or to vote by post. So that's again part of the electoral system which the country has inherited from a long time, and because of the two-thirds majority needed, the two political parties don't want to tackle the elephant in the room, which is how to deal with people who after Malta's accession to the European Union, actually went to work, to live abroad, to study abroad in all parts of Europe. So we have this phenomenon of a percentage of the population, we don't even know how big it is, who are actually living outside Malta, but who still have quite a significant attachment to the country in terms of family, etc. So,
but you also, sorry for interrupting, you also said that was the first time that it was possible for people over 16. This is an ongoing discussion we have as well in different countries all over Europe. What is the age limit? So did you feel that this works out, that more young people, have you seen more young people giving their ballot?
Yes, definitely. You asked about how it was in the election during the day. So I flew down on Thursday night. Friday is normally a day of reflection. So political parties cannot really campaign, but voting was pretty smooth. Where I voted in the center of the island, I literally walked in and walked out. So it was pretty calm at 9:30, 10 a.m. There weren't reports of queues. Of course, there was this young element of voting. From what I heard, when I was speaking to people, I think one of the fears of both the party in government and the party in opposition was getting the vote out. So at 2 p.m., the vote was around 44%, which again indicated it was low. So then I was hearing a lot of party candidates, party officials phoning people, telling them to go to vote if they needed assistance with voting. And as we said, 85% is a dream for other European countries. But in Malta, to put you in the picture, if even the elderly who can barely vote are assisted to go to vote. So it's everything is done to make it easy for people to vote. So the turnout is extremely low. I think probably it's still too early to assess which demographics did not go out to vote. Of course, every vote is private. Though I would say, and I would think that the political parties will have indications of which segments of the population did not go out to vote.
So there are, in total, there are 13 electoral districts in Malta, and you need to get the quota, and then you get the 5 seats from each district. I mean, Malta being that small, but still, can you differentiate if there are differences between, let's say, the capital region and the, well, let's call it countryside as far as there is countryside?
No, so as you said, the country is divided into 13 electoral districts, and each district is composed of a number of towns and villages. And historically, these districts have been adjusted sometimes to give an advantage to one party over another, or vice versa. But in general, the idea of the 13 districts is to have the same amount of people voting in each district. And in this case, you have districts which are generally leaning towards the Labour Party. There are districts which are traditionally leaning towards the Nationalist Party. And over the past few elections, so especially the last 2017 election and in this election, we're seeing major districts which were once conservative leaning, which today are majority leaning towards the Labour Party. One particular district, which is the island district of Gozo, is a case in point, which over the last years has leaned towards the Labour Party.
So we've seen now your results. So we have 65 seats in the parliament in total. The majority goes to the Social Democrats, but only 4 of those places in parliament have been gained by women. You also mentioned there should be a quota. We have a question on that already from Dr. Jürgen Römer, and he was wondering whether the outcome means that women in politics are strengthened now. I mean, I would say if only 4 of 65 are women, that's a low point in Europe to admit, or not?
Yes, I think it's a very, very low point. I would think, given the way the electoral system works, the actual number of women who will be elected in parliament will increase in the next phase of the election, which is when the candidates which have been elected from 2 districts give up one of their districts, which will result in a casual election. And I am sure that there will be more women which will be elected to parliament, but 4 is definitely a very, very low number. And to be honest, I'm not sure if the quota system actually works in favor of women or not. I think you need to boost and you need to give women as much visibility as possible. So maybe this legislature, with the topping up at some point after we have a full and clear picture of how many women have actually been elected to parliament. But if I'm not mistaken, only two women were elected from the party in government, which means that in the cabinet of ministers, the maximum number of women that there will be is 2 for the time being, unless the prime minister waits for the casual election, which is not something that is normal practice, because normally the ministers come from the first batch of elected candidates. So this is again,
there's a long way to go for Malta.
There's a very, very long way to go, which is also ironic because, as we were discussing before we started, you have the president of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, which is who is
a strong
Maltese,
woman in a leading role.
In a leading role, and she should be, and she is a shining example for women in Malta, hugely loved also by the conservative part of the electorate, which gave her a significant result for the European Parliament elections. So it's not like that the electorate is in a way biased. It's just that women need to be much more active in politics.
But most people decided for Robert Abela. It was his first election after he stepped in for Joseph Muscat. But still, beforehand, he was his legal advisor. So, and he said also he will continue with the work of Joseph Muscat. Do you think he just earned so many votes because of his pandemic management? You just mentioned before that your pandemic management was quite well. Or is that also because he was able to boost economy?
I think the boosting of the economy, whether you like it or not, as I partially mentioned with the controversial passport scheme, has been going on for quite some time. So I think, and the impression I got watching what I would say is a very low-key, again by Maltese standards, election campaign of the 2 parties, this sort of plea for the Labour voters to go out and to vote for him and to give him a significant majority, which was either as close as possible to what the previous Prime Minister had got, or even higher. And my hope is that this result actually gives him legitimacy to sort of in a way, separate from the past and really carry out the reforms which are needed and which were actually promised when he was fighting to be the leader of the Labour Party, and then de facto the prime minister when there was the resignation of Joseph Muscat.
So there was, now we've seen another win from a social democratic, from the Labour Party. Now we've seen a lot of wins from those parties, well, for instance, in Portugal, also in Germany, whatever. But what I've missed so far are big congratulation calls for Robert Abela. Is that something that you've seen as well, that even though he's now in the big group of social democratic leaders in Europe, that all the other big ones are not really counting on him?
I think this, in a way, is linked to the big ticket items we've been mentioning: the assassination of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia, the Golden Passport scheme, the maybe delay until selling passports to Russians was actually invoked. So yes, I do notice it. Of course, the Labour Party in Malta sits with the Social Democrat groupings in Parliament, but for certain issues they've also been slightly, I would say, sidelined. At least even when it came to voting on certain issues in the European Parliament, you sometimes see this. At the same time, I wouldn't, for the time, I haven't seen whether this morning the Prime Minister has received any congratulations or not.
Probably they'll come.
Yeah, so I think for sure they will come. And again, yesterday was the first time that the votes were counted electronically, but it meant that the official result, at least until I checked, has not yet been fully published on the government website. So again, it could be a factor of things.
So, but as we all mentioned now quite a few times, the grey listing and the corruption. We also have a question there from Ulrike Stierle von Schutz. She's wondering, how do the citizens from Malta see the grey listing and the corruption allegations? Is that an issue? And yes or no? And then also, what will be the priorities of the new government then?
If you judge by the last two election results, unfortunately, I would say corruption does not seem to be an issue. At least judging by the results in 2017 and now in 2022. Of course, there is pressure and there is significant pressure to do something. So it could be that indeed there are other factors linked to the results, such as maybe the perception that the opposition, because of fighting during the whole course of the 5-year legislature, was not seen as a credible government. But on the biggest poll in 2 general elections, definitely corruption has not factored in as a priority for the Maltese.
And the golden passports, though, you stopped now giving out golden passports to Russian people, at least. Is that something that you think the whole system will continue, because it's highly criticized by the rest of Europe?
Yes, I think it's, as I mentioned, highly controversial constantly, and I think it is highly controversial, and of course it's a major factor in the country's economy, and the way it's worked to a certain extent has meant that even part of the opposition that enabled the sale of passports through through services they offer. So it was a win-win. It's also boosted to a certain extent the property market, the rental market. So
I got that number right. So that's 1.4 billion euros that Malta earned by golden passports.
Exactly, which for a country of population of 500,000, as you can imagine, is significant. I would think, and I would, and seeing developments globally, that these schemes will probably come under much greater scrutiny, probably even be stopped. So, again, here's hoping that
this will stop.
This will stop.
Another problem that we know that Malta faces from time to time is the refugee ships and also the European discussions on whether to take them on or not. Is that something that you were discussing ahead of or that at least people were discussing ahead of the election?
I think, to be honest, it did not really figure in the discussions. Also because of the unfortunate war on Europe's doorsteps and large migration from Ukraine into Europe. It's an issue which, of course, is contentious. It's challenging for the two political parties. The island is extremely small, so of course any wave of migration passing through the island creates significant political debates and also political crisis. But I think the two parties deliberately stepped away from talking about it, also because the problem has not stopped, and now we have migration coming from the east, but of course we'll probably also have migration coming from the south as inflation hits the south. So it's something which is still there, but which was not discussed.
Is the war in Ukraine something that Maltese people discuss about? Because Malta is dependent on 95% on energy imports. I mean, that means you're basically, they can basically cut you off. So 95% of energy has to be imported to Malta. Is that something that is a topic at the moment?
Again, of course, it's a significant topic. We're speaking of energy, but we're also speaking of food coming in from outside, wheat coming in. As I said, Malta is an island of 500,000 people. In terms of size of the country, it's to give you an idea, it's the territory of Brussels. So it's really small. So it's not self-sufficient. So of course, there's a huge impact of prices, even transport prices, and so to import things to Malta, including energy, including gas. The opposition tried to raise the matter. The government sort of touched upon it, but so far there hasn't really been an impact, even seeing the petrol, diesel prices and the petrol stations, like they were still extremely low compared to what we're used to here. So it's something which I think the two parties skirted, but it's the elephant in the room, which is gonna
has to be tackled by the new government, which will be sworn in tonight, as far as I understood.
The Prime Minister was sworn in this morning. The way it works is that now he will go to the office of the Prime Minister, and he will start to call the elected members in and discuss the portfolios for the new government. I think by tonight we'll have an indication of who the ministers will be, and tomorrow they will be sworn in by the president.
That will be very quick then. Thank you so much, Ivan, for all this information and details. Thank you so much. So we will all follow on how Malta goes on and how the practice, for instance, of the golden passports goes on or not. As we hear, there is probably hope that this will stop. So thanks all for your attendance of this event. Vielen Dank für Ihr Interesse an unserer Veranstaltung.
Thank you for your interest in our event, but I would also like to draw your attention to the next event of the series Europe After the Elections, and the next election will be Hungary, and our next event from the presentation of the state of Hessen. And I can't quite find my notes. I believe it will be on April 4th. Yes, April 4th, the next event in the series Europe After the Elections, after the election in Hungary, ideally as a proper live event with an actual audience, if the situation allows for it. And it would be my great pleasure to welcome you to our next event. Again, thank you very much.